right, we're back, and I've decided to do a follow-up game to the one that I just posted on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. It got posted, and a few days later now. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to do another game. And remember, in the last game, my focus was to go get Moscow, and I was able to do that. But there were a couple of moments that I think were fairly telling in the game. The first one would be I attacked with two fighters and the bomber. I attacked this fleet here, and both the transport and the destroyer got hits, and so I took out two fighters. Um, and essentially, they were on their way to Moscow, right? Eventually, is where they were going to go. And losing them, I think, was fairly telling in the game because sea line's really not a big deal here, and the Germans are able to get tanks from here up to there quickly enough, and this transport, it's really not that big a deal. And obviously you can't hit the subs. So I think this game I'm going to leave them alone for now, until I can maybe afford to put in some boats for the British and send them in there to take care of that little Baltic fleet. Something else that went on was that India fell very easily. I put a factory in there and it fell. It fell on the first time it was attacked, just because the Japanese were able to bring enough units and all their air cover into India, and the anti-aircraft gun got no hits. So it gave a nice shiny factory to the Japanese on the mainland to go along with their one in French Indochina and eventually one in Manchuria, and that's just too much for Moscow to handle. So the British will likely not build in India this game. What I might do is build in South Africa. Building here in Anglo-Egyptian Sudan is a losing proposition. You're just simply not going to hold on to it. Of course, I forgot to add Buddy there. You're just not going to hold on to it. You only have 3 units there. You could get 4, but you only have 3 before the Germans attack with up to 6, including the bomber from Germany and the fighter here from the Balkans coming in. So it's really, you're just not going to hold Anglo-Egyptian Sudan. I think, in my mind, I think that this should have 1 more infantry. It's just not a fair fight. But beyond that, everything else is fairly status quo. Not a lot of huge surprises. The Japanese, as I tend to play in this game, get a healthy navy so the Americans can't get close, and that's a bit of a shield for the westward march of the Imperial Japanese Army and the Air Force as well. So we're going to try this game to hold Moscow against against the Germans and the Japanese. And it's a tall order in this game. As you can see, all you got really is a whole bunch of infantry in here. And it's stuck between the two giants. And the Americans aren't any help. I've seen some people build an American factory here on turn 1. It dies on turn 2 if you do that. Because I, as a Japanese player, send everything into here and then take it. Like it's that simple. And if the Russians decide to move in here, okay, then the Germans are going to have an easier time coming across. So yeah, if you play America, don't build a factory there. It dies a horrible death. All right, well, wish me luck. We're going to hopefully hold on to Moscow this time. As you know, this game is a little different in that it is based on victory cities, and you're just trying to get as many as you can. Of course, you can see that there are different levels of victory. I didn't turn on my little overhead lamp here. There we go. That's a little better. Or is it? Maybe the glare is bad. So 8, 10, and 12. Minor, major, and total victory, respectfully. I have not seen anybody get 12. People typically end up getting bored after you get to 10. So we're going to try to get the 10 for the either side, and we'll see how that goes. Not really sure how it's going to go, but that means it's a good game. So wish me luck, and turn 1 will be done right away. All right, so turn one is over, turn two about to begin, and some interesting happenings and goings on here. So we'll start in the Pacific, where of course the Japanese came and sank the carrier, and the Americans came back and attacked, and it cost the Americans dearly in that they lost 2 fighters, but they were able to dispatch the Japanese destroyer and battleship, and that's yeah, you always like to do that if you can. Over here, the Japanese had quite the battle. They came in and they had their 2 fighters, 3 fighters, and a bomber. And these guys, they came and attacked the British fleet, wiped it out on the first roll, and the British got no hits whatsoever. So that was a most inauspicious beginning for the British Indian fleet. Up here, though, however, the Americans were able to hold off the Japanese in China. The Japanese attacked with 4 infantry and 2 fighters. Yes, 4 infantry and 2 fighters against the 2 infantry and 1 fighter. And they only got 1 hit in 2 rounds of combat, whereas the opponents got 4 and the Americans got 4. So they lost all of their infantry and decided to hightail it out of there before they would lose fighters. And so China remains in American hands, although for but a short time. Up here, we see we got some British aircraft who have come to try to help out the Russians. The Russians, of course, take West Russia, as they are always wont to do in this game. And the Germans took Leningrad with authority. The British came and landed in Norway, trying to pull some of the German might away from the Russians. But they took it on the chin. The 3 men and 1 fighter got 3 hits and done 1 tank. And not much for a follow-up. So, knowing that we want to send fighters to Moscow as soon as possible, I did build another fighter here. And they can get to Moscow in 1 turn. They go up around the north, 1, 2, 3, 4. So hopefully that will bulwark or be a good bulwark in Moscow as the Germans start heading that direction. No factory for the British in India or in Australia, and I left their boats here because I thought, well, just didn't want to put them out in harm's way unnecessarily. Germans were able to take Anglo-Egyptian Sudan for the loss of a couple of men, and then flew their planes that extra 1 to Libya to land. So Libya is pretty stocked up. Now the Americans could have come and landed in Algeria here, but the Germans decided to hang on to their boats as best they could, and so they've got 2 U-boats sitting right there, ready to assault anything that comes here, along with some decent air power. Built a fighter for the Germans this round. No tanks on the first round. And I know that's something I've done before, where I don't build tanks on the first round because they'll just outpace the infantry and artillery anyway. So built a fighter, and then $30 worth of stuff to move that way. The other German sub that was out here in 8 came down to attack the battleship. So we left the British with their 2 transports. So they have 2 transports, a battleship and a destroyer, along with a Russian sub along for the ride. So it's probably going to be there to stay. That's a fleet that they're going to build off of, and that will likely cause some grief for the Germans. We'll see if it was a good trade-off or not. Killing the battleship in 13 and taking Anglo-Egyptian Sudan, but now the British are going to be able to build up a transport fleet and start sending stuff in. So what the Japanese and the Germans are going to want to do is, of course, nibble away at the British Empire everywhere they can, which likely means that India will be in a little bit of trouble this turn. I don't know if there's going to be an attack. Might give it a whirl. They do have 1 tank that can make it, as well as a ton of fighters and the bomber. And can't get anything there on with the transports though, because they can only travel 2 spaces, so they couldn't quite get to India this turn. The British, with their fighter that was here, came and sank that transport that was there. It's always risky though, because transports do fire at a 1, but they missed. And so that really does actually hamper the Japanese round one expansion. So that's what we've got so far. Soviets built a tank and artillery and 4 or 5 men this turn. 4 men. Tank and artillery is 9, so that would have given them 15, so 5 men. So decent build. You're going to have to wait and see what they do. I'm going to have to try to back up that British fighter, though, before it dies. British fighter participated in Norway. That's why he couldn't make it all the way to Moscow, in case you're wondering. All right, round 2 coming up. Should be fun. All right, headed off to round 3 here, but we're going to take a look at the Pacific. And the Americans built a couple of subs and some fighters over here and moved their fleet out to Pearl. And it's really out of harm's way here. Not a lot can attack it, so they're feeling pretty good about that. Some fighters to go on the carrier, which has been empty. Over here, the Japanese moved into Baracha and didn't suffer any losses to the 2 Soviet infantry that were there. And they were also able to put 2 guys into China, because the Americans just, obviously, they had left it empty and didn't counterattack this round. The Japanese built 3 tanks here in French Indochina, which will likely force the British to retreat from India. The bombers down here, because it did a bombing run from Moscow, came down and did a whole 1 damage, so that could have been a bit better. The Germans are moving a little bit further to the east. We'll take Persia this turn, and are gobbling up parts of Africa. We'll likely take Rhodesia. But if you look up here, you see the Americans, Operation Torch in full swing. No Kasserine Pass ever happened, so they're good to go. And another small landing to follow up. Now, the Germans can hit this fleet here with a fighter and a bomber, but that is all. And considering how wacky the ones have been this game, I don't think the Germans are going to test that. But they do have their battleship down here. Might even throw a sub or 2 in the Mediterranean just to slow down the Allied advance. Up here, the Russians went into West Russia and took it with authority. Forgot to move those guys back. Karelia actually was a pretty good stand by the Russians. The Germans ended up down just to a single tank. That's all they had left. Now you can see on round 2 I built a good stack of tanks. A stack of should be 6 there. I think I might have only put 5, but there should be 6 there. I remember I spent 30 of their, I think they had 48 or something to spend this round. So we're going to have to possibly add another chip there. And they were able to take back Norway, but you can see that their fleet is gone, as is the British fleet. The British fleet died in Sea Zone 3. The Russian sub and the battleship and the couple of transports, they all died. So the British spent their entire build on that, trying to get back onto the continent. And it did cost the Germans quite a bit. It cost them their whole surface fleet, as well as 2 fighters. So all they have left is a bomber. And they're down to, they got 4 fighters on the board here, and not really sure if they're willing to throw away more aircraft. They might have to, but not really sure. They're doing pretty well financially. Right now they're up at 45, and the Americans are at 41, the Japanese are at 33, and then the British and Russians are at 24, 23 respectively. So the Russians have had a decent economy going here, but again, it's only the second round, and I think they collected 29 last round, because they owned Karelia and they owned Ukraine. They went into Ukraine and took that, and they had 5 infantry in there. And then the Germans did a landing with 2 guys, moved up a couple of guys and brought in some planes, had the bombard, and they took it back without suffering a loss. Yeah, that was pretty bad for the Russians. They gotta shoot better than that on defense. And I think that's pretty much it. So round 3 will let us know how much help the Russians are going to need. As you can see right now, there are 4 fighters on Russian soil, and there is a tank that could try to take a poke, and then another stack of 2 tanks and some other aircraft. So the Russians will probably take Karelia back here, or try. I think they can do it, just to save those British fighters. Alright, round 3 coming up. Should be a good one. Alright, here's a quick video. Against my better judgment, I came after this fleet, and there was an American destroyer here, and on the first round I got 1 hit. The bomber missed, and so the destroyer goes away, and they didn't get any hits back. The 3 from the destroyer, and then the ones from the transports, no hits. So we rolled again. Those 2 white dice are the transports, and the bomber missed again. So the bomber did no good, it just died, and so did the fighter. And so what we're left with now, so 1 transport goes away, but that's gone. Anyway, we got some more of this round to do, but holy cow. Okay, so here we are, turn 4 on the way, and wow, wow, wow. So, the Pacific, as you can see, is pretty cleaned out, just had a huge battle. And the 2 subs, the carrier and the fighter, are just a recent build here for the Americans. They went charging in and took out quite a bit of the Japanese stuff, but you can see there's still a healthy Air Force left and a battle wagon. Down in the south, Calcutta fell, and I think they only got 2 hits. Yeah, it was pretty bad. But the anti-aircraft gun was pretty good. Took out 2 Japanese fighters. So that's going to slow down the Japanese march a little bit. Now the Germans, of course, took Persia. And so now the Japanese tanks are able to fly right through. So Russia may want to take out Persia here. I think that might be a good idea. That'll slow them down a little bit. But there are bigger fish to fry up here. As you can see, the Germans are very well entrenched in Leningrad. They will not be removed this turn by the Russians. Just not enough stuff to threaten the Russians there. Threaten the Germans. Pardon me. The Russians can bring 3 tanks, 2 fighters, and 4 ground units. To try to take out 7 tanks and 2 infantry. So I don't think that would end well for the Russians. Sometimes I like to do them just as a spoiling attack, and maybe get some lucky dice or whatever, but you can see there's nothing really between the Germans and Moscow, and there's a lot of stuff in the Caucasus, but we always have to be ready for a German naval incursion as well, so we got to be ready for that. The British were able to take Norway for the loss of an infantry and a fighter. They actually lost a fighter so they could take Norway. Both of the ground units that they brought in and the 2 ground units the Germans had in there, they both got hits, so yeah. So you can see there's only 2 British fighters in Russia now. The British still trying to build up a little bit of a fleet here, a little bit more modest. But as you saw in that quick video, the Germans lost their far-reaching bomber. And so now if the Germans want to go after any British fleet up there, they're going to have to maybe use these subs, but I don't give them a lot of hope because you got a destroyer and a battleship there. So a couple of 2s versus a 3 and a 4 that takes a hit. I think those subs might be in for some trouble. And no planes can get up there. No fighters can get up there at this time. So they'll have to relocate some fighters to Karelia at the end of this round, but that will really depend on what they do with these forces here. The Americans just bulked up here in Algeria, and will start to move across to the east, probably on this next turn. Just have a little bit of a shuck going here. Totally unprotected, but also I don't know if the Germans really want to stick their battleship and transport out here. Maybe they do. I think it's probably a lot more useful versus the Russians. If you take that out of there, if you take that battleship out to here, just to deal with that, then the Russians know they can pretty much vacate the Caucasus and not even build in there if they don't want to. So the Germans, I think that it's not really worth the transport. Might take a shot with a fighter, but again, these transports have been swatting aircraft out of the sky quite a bit. The British bomber up here, it was in India, did a bombing run and did 5 damage this time. So that kind of took a little bit of steam out of the Japanese, but they still built their requisite 3 tanks. The Germans are down here. The British brought one guy across from Australia, and we'll see if they can survive this German attack that's coming, a 3 and a 2 versus 2 2s. It'll be interesting. Other than that, we're just headed on to round 4, and yeah, it's a good game. I kind of like how this is going. Again, the Axis always have the upper hand on the first 3-4 rounds, and it's whether or not the Allies can gird up their loins for battle and try to take care of things. So far, not too bad. Having a decent presence in Africa is a big deal, and also staying alive in China this long is a bit of a big deal, although I think they're probably going to get wiped out this turn. Can get hit by 4 Japanese tanks, a bomber, a fighter, and a couple of infantry. But you never know. Might have other things for people to do. Stay tuned, we'll let you know. Turn 4. Alright, a bit of good news, bad news for both sides here. We'll start in the Pacific. All my dice kind of a mess here, but the Japanese spent nothing on anything on the ocean because the Americans really aren't that much of a threat. So I decided to send out the 4 American subs because there are no Japanese destroyers. So yeah, they're going to be out there causing grief for at least the next round. And that battleship will likely have to go someplace else if it wants to remain safe. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I haven't quite decided yet. Japanese did build 3 tanks here and did put a factory into India. You can see the Japanese are all here around Moscow. So right now, Russia is way down in money. They have, right now, I think they're at 17. And I think that might even be a little high. I might have to check here. So this is 4, it's 12, 13, 14, 15. No, that is right. That's 17. Yes, the Germans did not do an attack in any direction this turn up north. I was doing the math very quickly, and it just wasn't worth it to send anything over to Norway because I'd likely have to send 2 tanks in order to take it along with the fighter, and then they're out of position, and I'd be pretty weak up here versus any sort of a Soviet counterattack. Now the Soviets may have to counterattack anyway. They're getting pretty low here. These tanks are a real menace, but not sure what to do. If I counterattack and then bring everything from the Caucasus up into Moscow, I have 25 bucks from last turn, so that's 8 units I'll build. Yeah. Not sure if that can survive, because even right here, we've got 3, 6, 9, 10, 11 with the bomber that can actually head into Moscow. So that is bad news for the Russians. So I might have to just lock everything up. We'll see. On the other side, we do have the British taking France, taking West Europe, and taking Paris. So the Axis are down to 7 cities now. And they have a couple transports and force things to come across to load up. So the Germans will have to take care of this. So, and you see there's no follow-up, right? This is it. That's it for the Germans. So if they screw this up, it might not be good for them. But with the Japanese having a free hand here, I think it's only a matter of time. Now the Americans are trying to do their shtick here, nibbling away at the German economy and helping the British get back on their feet a little bit. We also have an American transport came down to Brazil. Again, the Germans can certainly come out here and kill it with their battleship, but the Americans have a battleship, a fighter, the British have a battleship, and a couple of destroyers. Again, is it really worth it to throw that away? The Germans did succeed in taking the Union of South Africa, the loss of an artillery. The British put their little sub up here because I did have the Japanese transport here, and I thought I could bring stuff over, and I thought, well, let's put an end to that right there. So that last round went really well for the Japanese. I think they only lost one unit in the entire round, and they killed a number of things here. So yeah, good for them. So we're going to play round 5 here. I think Russia is going to be down to a very small amount of money coming in. Russia can't even afford to do spoiling attacks. Really, they could take this stack and go here. They could take these guys and go here and bring some tanks across. So they could wipe out all this Japanese stuff, but then, obviously, bad news in the West. Time will tell, though. Sometimes when you play solo games, you try stuff you'd never try if you were playing against another opponent. So we'll see what I come up with here in the Soviet turn on round 5. You'll find out in a moment. All right, some high points and low points for both sides. We're going to take you through the Pacific here, and the high point for the Americans. So we went charging in with 4 subs and a fighter, going up against a battleship, a destroyer, and 2 transports. And we still got 2 subs left and the fighter. Yeah, that was pretty bad rolling by the Japanese. Of course, I mean, it's a 4 and a 3 and 2 ones, and they got 2 hits on the first round and 2 hits on the second, and the battleship missed, so that didn't do the Japanese any favors. Americans brought the transport out to Hawaii, so now they can possibly do a little bit of a threaten, but Japan gets to build first, so not much could come from that, I think. Over here, we're going to show you what it looks like around Moscow. So the Russians are hurting for certain. They were able to push out, and they actually took this, the Evenki National Okrug, and they had 2 tanks sitting in there, but they were dispatched by 3 tanks of the Japanese along with some air power. Retreated from Archangel, of course, because there just wasn't any reason to sit there and get pummeled by a big stack of tanks. And that is what we have left. The Russians were able to, of course, build there. Also built in the Caucasus, because didn't want to just give that up. Plus, there's one more turn, so likely it's going to head back this round. Put up a blocker in Novosibirsk. Evenki, we might even kill those 2 tanks. But boy, that's a growing concern there. That's 10 tanks, and there's only 1 aircraft that can make it, but there's also a couple of ground units here that can make it. So 10 tanks. Yeah, especially with 6 new Japanese tanks over here that are going to be up there in 2 turns. So got to be careful. Over here in Africa, the Americans tried a landing here. There was 1 German tank, and they landed with a man and artillery and a little bit of mutually assured destruction there. They were unable to wrest control from the Nazis. And speaking of Nazis, they're up here, and they were able to take that, dispatching the American tank that had blitzed across last round. So the Americans landed again, Operation Torch Part 2, and landed a fighter as well. It wasn't really Torch because they owned it. But there's a battleship in the Atlantic for the Americans now. So a little bit of security and a couple more transport loads ready to come on over. So southern Italy is now going to feel a little bit of pressure. Of course, it's easy to take care of with the Germans for coming from Germany. The bombing run only got 2 damage on the German factory. The British came up to Karelia and were able to just land unopposed. So the Germans really, I mean, they could send up these tanks here and send up these tanks in the fighter and take care of that. But the British are just going to come back with 6 more units. And so the Germans, I don't know. This is going to be a really interesting round, folks, because the Russians are essentially going to build everything in Moscow. They've only got $20. So that's going to figure out, I guess, to be 4 men and 2 artillery, because you want to spend it all, because whatever doesn't get spent just goes to the Germans if they capture, or the Japanese. And those 10 tanks coming in and a couple of ground units and a fighter might not take Moscow, but it could make it soft enough that the follow-up of 5 Japanese tanks and a fighter might do something, and a bomber. But, of course, if they block this off, it's, math and dice that tend to do their own thing sometimes. All right, so that was round 5. Round 6 is going to be an exciting one. The Americans kind of own the Pacific right now, but again, the Japanese get to build first, but they will want to continue to keep the pressure on. I think if Japan doesn't keep the pressure on, I think the Germans are in big trouble. Because now that America is going to start shucking things over, Germany can't afford to build subs. There's too many destroyers floating around anyway. It's looking like it's kind of now or never for the Germans. And now or never might mean heading down and taking the Caucasus so they can have someplace to build right next door to Moscow. Could be taking a poke at Moscow. Who knows? Something's got to give this round, though. You'll find out right away. All right, well, we're going on to round 7 here. So I'll have to add another dice. And yeah, here we go. Pretty empty Pacific still. And the Japanese did build some men at home because there was the transport here. But the transport came down here and decided that, nah, we're going to come down here and take New Guinea. So the Japanese are starting to feel a little bit of a pinch here. Not much. But they have nothing in the water. So the Americans might be able to gobble up a couple islands here and there. And so the Japanese, well, what they're hoping for is a victory up in Moscow. We didn't have a big battle. The Russians decided to put everybody into Moscow, so they evacuated and did a couple of small spoiling attacks that went okay. But that's pretty much it. They're totally boxed in now and are just holding on for dear life. They got bombed for one by the Japanese, who then landed over here, and you can see that the Caucasus is not going to fall anytime soon. The British had their 4 guys up in Karelia. They branched out a little bit, and then we did an attack in Norway and took that for the loss of 1 man. And yeah, there's still another 6 units ready to come ashore. So yeah, definitely going to be a German attack this round. They're probably going to clear out all this British stuff and try to cause as much grief as they can. But Germany's economy is likely going to go down for a little while here. They're actually down quite a bit right now because of, well, the loss of this territory here. They have the 6 in the Soviet Union, but they've lost 4 here and 3 there, so that's 7. So they're actually down 1, and then they're up whatever this adds up to. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they're up 10, which I guess isn't terribly bad. Now, the big question is, will these Americans be able to put much pressure? You can see that the German battleship and transport are gone, and that was the weirdest battle I think I've ever had. So the battleship came in and they had the fighter, and they each got 1 hit on the first round. Actually, no, they didn't. The Americans got a hit on the first round, or 2 hits, pardon me, 2 hits on the first round, sank the battleship. The Germans got no hits on the second round, and then the Americans got no hits on the second round. And the transport that was left actually got a hit. So it damaged the battleship. And I'm thinking, holy cow, the transport's going to end up sinking the battle wagon. But then they dispatched the transport, which then proceeded to miss. But now you've got 3 American transports here, 6 units and a fighter that can all land anywhere along here. So maybe even a British landing here and then reinforce with American stuff. Who knows? And if the British do take it, then they can actually land a fighter in there. Now, having said that, if Moscow falls, this is going to be a really tough climb. But you can see that the Germans for the past couple rounds have been building a lot of meat shields because you know that the Allies are coming, and you just don't want to have a small stack of tanks. You want a big stack of infantry to just absorb the hits. Will it be enough, though? That's still to be decided, obviously. Not much else going on out here. The battle lines are drawn. The Germans are going to have to take care of these British, though. You can't let them just wander around and snipe these territories. So they're going to probably dispatch them and probably meet up in West Russia with all the tanks. Unless they actually do a shot at Moscow this turn, which they might. Now, the Russians got 20 again last round. They certainly will not be getting 20 this round. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 8. So they'll have 12. They're going to be making $12 this round, unless they can. They don't have a tank, so they can't blitz out to here. But they might send one guy. I don't know if it's worth sending one guy for $2. That's just because if you lose, it just goes to the Germans. So, yeah. Anyway, we'll see what we see. These guys will probably head back and try to defend Moscow as well. And it's getting pretty tense here, though. Americans too little too late. The British too little too late. We'll find out. See how round 7 goes. Alright, so here we are. This is the long shot battle for Moscow that the Germans are attempting. They simply don't have the horses to pull this off, but they can hopefully, for the Axis, knock Russia down a few pegs. Not sure if they're going to be effective at that. They were very effective at taking care of the little British problem in there. Not sure if that's going to be the same here. All right, so first thing we have is we have anti-aircraft, just the one German plane coming in, and it's going to make it. All right, so what we have is we've got 4 at 2 for the Germans. It's a good start. 2 hits. And then we have 5, 10, 13 at 3. So we're going to roll 7 and then 6. Okay, so 3 hits. So that's up to 5. There we go. And then the remainder, 8. Okay, so right on the bubble there. So that's 8 hits on the Soviets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so that's 8. And they have 9, 10, and then they have this. So it's 28 at 2. 28 at 2. So I guess the best thing to do is to roll 7 4 times. Yeah. Here we go. 7 4 times. We got our hit die ready to go. 1. Won't need a hit die if we do that badly. 2. Oh my goodness. 3, 4, 5, 6 hits. And here's the last one. So 9. 9 out of 28. Actually, they got back up to a decent amount there. So 9 hits. Here's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. There we go. So we know that we have 9 tanks and a fighter left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, we got 10. Here we go. All right. Now we got the 4 at 4. 3 more hits. So 1, 2, 3. All right. So yeah, took a good chunk of Soviets out in that first wave. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we should get at least 3 hits here with the Germans. Got to be careful when I count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1 is 7. All right. 7 dice. Here we go. Whoop, get that out of there. Whole stack of 6. That's a roll, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So we have 6, 7, 8, and then these 12. So that's 20. So we have 20. That'll be all 10 of the dice twice. Here we go. All 10 of the dice twice. 2. Oh, we're back to our lousy rolling. 6. So that's 6 there. And our 4s just need one more hit, and we got it. All right. So I got rid of that, but that got rid of that. So that much died in Moscow, and that may have been enough to let the Japanese sneak in there to take Moscow out. Now, the way things are going, though, taking Moscow will not end the game. It's this has been very much a, well, you can see Germans got problems north and south. So and as we look over here, if they did take it, they'd have 9, but they wouldn't have the 10. So even if they take it, it doesn't end the game. Typically you would end the game, because it's, you know, once Russia's out, it becomes a little bit of a dull build up, and then you try to take London, and London has to button up, so it's just not a lot of fun. There is no Hawaii, you know, there's no, you don't get any points for that. Manila here is one of Japan's already, right? So I guess the Americans could try to take that back and knock them down, but essentially the London, Los Angeles, pardon me, or Washington are your targets. So that is the first battle for Moscow. We'll show you the second one if I feel like doing it. Not too much can make it, though. Looks to be 9 tanks, a plane, a fighter, and a bomber. That's it. So I'd be throwing away a lot of expensive units. But it might be enough just to let the Germans in. Who knows? We'll show you, hopefully. Alright, so round 7 did not have a second battle of Moscow, and we'll show you why. But here we have the Americans creeping out a little bit, not actually attacking anything. They did try to attack Borneo, and that went much poorer than the New Guinea battle went. They got wiped out by the lone infantryman that was there. Japanese continue to put 6 tanks on the continent each and every round. And what that means is right now there are 21 Japanese tanks headed towards Moscow. And so it's only going to be a matter of time, folks. Even the Germans will likely take another poke here. They can bring 6 tanks and 1 fighter. And yeah, why not, right? That's a few less guys that the Japanese will have to contend with. The Japanese on this turn will likely be able to bring 9, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20 units to attack. And there aren't that many left. There's 12, well, there's 19, but one of them is a bomber. Now, if the German attack fails, which it will, the British are bringing in 6 more units there, and then they've got another 5 there, and they're just going to be shucking guys back and forth here now, trying to get guys over. I was thinking about just building fighters here, but I can only build 1, maybe 2 fighters around, and as nice as the 4s are, I'd rather have, you know, 3 3s and 3 2s dropping off into there. And should Japan actually take Moscow, maybe there'll be enough British presence here to take it back right away. And it's not as though the attackers are going to be walking away with a ton of cash here. It's like $13. That's better than kicking a butt with a frozen muckluck, but it's not going to be a game decider. And until Germany can put some actual pressure on the UK, this will just continue. The Americans also have dispatched the Africa Corps. They're gone, and there's no way to get them back in there unless they want to take a hard right turn through the Caucasus and head down, which I doubt they're going to want to. So the American tank will likely start freeing up more British money here. So the Axis have got to get this done fairly quickly and also prevent a recapture by the British. You know what, folks? I'm really loving this game. This is a fantastic game. Back and forth, highs and lows, unexpected rolls, lots of surprises, and it's just been so much fun. But we're not even done yet, and I don't even know if we're close. So round 8's coming up. It's going to be entertaining. All right, well, this could be it for Moscow. It's going to be an interesting tilt. It's pretty even Steven. But I think the Japanese have a slight advantage here, but we'll find out. Maybe the AA will shoot down one of these 3 Japanese planes coming in. Oh, gotta be in the dish. Okay, well, they got one. It's always got to be in the die tray, or else it don't count. All right, well, that will certainly help. All right, here's the 2 Japanese infantry. Oh, they get a hit back as well. And we're going to lose British stuff, of course, first. Well, British infantry and then Russian infantry. So we got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. We have 16 at 3. So we're going to roll 8 dice twice. 2. And 5 is 7. And then the bomber. Ooh, miss. So 7 more. So that's going to be 4. Yeah. 5, 6, 7. All right. So that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then there's 7 here. So that's 21 twos. We'll take care of the bomber first. Let's see if the bomber can get a hit. No. So we got 21, did I say 21 2? I got to quit talking so I can keep track of things. 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, so that's 21. That's all these dice twice and then 1 more. So 4. 5, 6. 1 more. Oops, 7. Sure, make me grab another dice. And then we've got the 4 4s with the fighters. Ooh, so that's 11 hits. 1, 2, 5, 8, 11. All right, there you go. So that's 11 hits. And this is what we have left. Now, this is where playing a solo game, I can do what I want, right? Like, nobody cares. Doesn't matter if I win or lose because I'm both sides and neither side. Right now, though, we've only got 8 units left for the Japanese. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12, 13, 14. We got 17 for the Allies. Now, on the next turn, the Germans can hit this with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Can hit with 11 units. And then the Japanese will be back in a position to hit with 6 more. So do we press and hope that the Germans, even though most of their stuff is 1s, can take it? I think we do. I think we keep pressing on and hope for a decent roll here. So there's 7 3s. 7 3s and 1 4. We're going to roll them all at once. Here we go. That is a very good roll. That's 6 hits. So that's 5 6. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13. So we got 13 at 2. That was a very good roll. That was really only 1 above the average, but still. So 13 at 2. Wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Speaking of good rolls. 8. No, that's everything. All right. Well, they hit 6 more units that now the Germans will not have to fight next round, which will extend their longevity a little bit. So, all right. We'll see how this turns out. Heading off to turn 9 here, and we'll show you the Pacific in all of its glory. The Americans have decided to put some more pressure on Japan to hopefully draw some yen from India and French Indochina and bring it back into the Japanese home waters. To start things off, though, the Americans did a landing here to support their Soviet ally. Hopefully it's not too little too late, and try to increase their economy a little bit. Not much else went on here. We did do a full build here in the Pacific. Not a full build, sorry. A good chunk of the build. Over here again, Japanese, 6 more tanks. I actually played around with the idea of adding another factory, but knowing that that American transport and those units were lurking there, I figured that'd be kind of a silly thing to do. Might go in next turn, and it may actually go into Sinkiang. Now I could only do 2 units per turn in there, but they're just instantly going into Russia, so right into Moscow, pardon me. So it might be an idea. Up here, the British are continuing to bring things over, trying to help out. And the Germans, not much left to punch back with here, about 11 units. And the Soviets do get to build first, although they only have $13. So that'll be a whopping 4 units, I guess. But that will still give them the advantage over the Germans. But then the Japanese get to hit with 6. So, you know, this is just back and forth. So I might have to pull the trigger on another factory here pretty shortly for the Japanese. Of course, over here, the Americans have started to liberate Africa from the grasp of the Germans. And so they got a little bit of work to do, as you can see. But a couple of tanks will finish that off in, well, one tank will essentially finish it off in a couple of turns. We also have the American transport that was over here that they attacked the Philippines with and failed miserably. He's coming over here and put a little bit of pressure perhaps on India. Won't be terribly much, but anything to distract them from their goal of taking Moscow. British continue to build and will be able to shuck now 8 units across if they can even build 8 units. They don't have much for an economy. It is gone up though. It's up to 23 now, thanks to these 3 points being given back to them, and also on the strength of owning Norway. Yeah, a little bit here. We brought the lone transport over and we got a man and a tank. They'll come over to add to the American number in Africa. So that's where we are right now. It continues on. You've seen a couple of good battles for Moscow. It'll be interesting to see what we can do with all this. Not really sure what to do here with Germany. I think I have to do a spoiling attack here, and I've got lots of men and the artillery and 4 tanks and a fighter. Go smack that. But then the British can come back with all these units and a bombard and probably silence that. I don't know. It's going to be interesting, though. The Germans are making 43 right now, and Japan is making 42. Although that's going to fluctuate a little bit for both of them. Probably a little bit more down than up, though. And if that continues, then this will be more of an allied opportunity than for the Axis. But turn 9 will be interesting, just like all of them. We'll show you what happens. Alright, so on to turn 10, and more build-up in the Pacific for the Americans. Trying to put a little bit of pressure on the Japanese. It is going to take a couple of turns, though, and until then, the Russians have to hold out. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to, but we will see. Alright, Japan continuing their little tank builds, but here come the Americans. America's now in a position to bring over, well, 1 tank. But they did very well up here in Europe. Well, I shouldn't say very well. There were 7 defending units. And the Americans lost, let's see here. They landed 8 units and lost 6 to 6 infantry and 1 tank. So, but hey, they took it. So I guess I better put a roundel on there. So they got an extra $6 this turn. Up north, the Germans decided not to go for Moscow, as did the Japanese. And the Germans just took these 2 territories and then withstood a ferocious British counterattack that went absolutely in the toilet right from the get-go. As they say, no plan survives contact with the enemy, and that is true. Now, the Germans did lose 4 infantry there, but the British lost 7 units total and had to retreat their planes before they lost any more. So that was pretty nasty, which means now that unless the Soviets are able to do something about this stack of German tanks here in Archangel, that means that those 4 plus those 4 tanks those 2 fighters, these 3 tanks and 1 man, will be able to assault Russia directly on the next turn, and then we'll have a dozen Japanese tanks and a fighter coming in. And you can see that the factories are getting bombed here. The Germans built a factory right here on the front lines. So now, once they repair the damage, of course, they can build 6 units right at the gates of Moscow. And the British, being unable to get anything there this turn, it's going to be tough to rescue Moscow now, but we will play it out and see how it goes. So, big dent to the German economy there, and not a lot to hit with, but definitely enough to take it back. And there's not a real follow-up for the Americans. They're just not in a position to do that. They can bring this 1 tank up and maybe snipe 3 points there. Likely this will be back in German hands at the end of the German turn, and they'll have some big builds going on. So, could be one of those things that we're used to, too little, too late. But, again, we will play it out. Africa is being liberated. So, yeah, the German economy right now, they're down to 34, which is 4 less than what they start with in the game, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. Or 6 less, pardon me. 6 less. So, that's pretty bad for them. But, hey, they're on the gates of Moscow once again. We'll let you know. Alright, so here is the first battle for Moscow. It might be the last, too. We'll see how the Germans do with this one. This is not a real clear winner either way. So the Germans have, let's see here, was that 9, 11? I think they got 11. Should count that up. So we got 8, 9, yeah. So 11 tanks, 2 fighters and a man, and 2 fighters for now. So that's 14 units versus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So on the surface of it, the Russians should do all right here. If the 4s really kick in each round, get 3 or 4 hits per round, it should be over fairly quickly, but shoulda, coulda, woulda. We'll find out. Here comes the anti-aircraft. No joy. So, the Germans. Miss, miss, miss. And now we have 13. So we'll roll 7 and 6. Oh, that's pretty devastating. That's 6 hits. We're going to roll all those again. And 4 more, so that's 10. So 10 hits. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I hate killing a bomber, but I think we got to do it. 10. So that's the 10 hits on the Russians. And coming back, so we've got 1 at 1 with the bomber. Nothing on the way out the door here. And then we've got, I gotta remember these numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. Well, this would be 9 because we had 10 hits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 hits? I thought we had 10 hits. I thought we had 10 hits. I think we had 10 hits. I'll go back and watch the film, and if I'm wrong, well, we'll see how we do here. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So 16 at 2. So that's going to be 8 twice. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. 4. That's not so good. And then 5, 6. Yeah, not looking really good right now. So we're going to put that one there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 tanks are out of the game there. Still have 5 tanks left over. Russians will likely hold on here, but I think the Japanese are going to wipe them out. All right, so the Germans have 5 tanks and 2 fighters left. So that's 7 at 3. Oh, what am I doing? Kill the man. I just took off the infantry. I wasn't in frame. So we'll add 1 more tank. So we have 6 plus 2. We have 8. So here's 8 dice. Well, exactly on the bubble. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4, 5, 6 at 2 and 4 at 4. So we'll start with the 4 at 4. Got 3. I'll put that up there so I don't forget. And 6 at 2. It's like they don't care. 3 more hits. 1, 2, 3. It doesn't look like anybody can come and challenge the Germans, so I'll hang on to my air power for now. Alright, so we're down to 5 versus 6. It could be an interesting ending. Here we go. So we got 5 at 3. Okay, only 2 hits that time. And then we have 2 at 2. No hits. Boy, that's not good for them. And 4. 3 hits. Okay, so 1, 2. Guess we need to keep 1 tank to capture the place. Get rid of a plane. And then we only got 2 for them. Alright, so we've got 2 at 3 versus 4 at 4. We can roll them all at the same time here. There we go. So these are all dead. And we're going to lose the American plane. Alright, so this is all that's left in Moldova. 3 planes. I think that's it, folks, for Moscow. But we'll continue to play because there is some pressure being put on Japan here. And the Americans are liberating all this. Britain's getting their economy back and probably start to build up a fleet here. So this game could continue for a while. And we'll let you in on the secret when we do the whatchamacallit, battle for Moscow with the Japanese. I'm probably not going to film it. I'll just let you know how it turns out. Okay, well, I think we're probably going to call it at this point. I think that the Americans are just a little too late here, trying to come to Japan. There's only 4 units that they can land, a couple of fighters, and they'll have a bombard. But the Japanese already have 9 units, I think, on there, and they can build another 8, no problem. It's just too much stuff. And should the Americans come over and try to get involved in a ground war here in Asia, which is a bad idea.
You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is never get involved in a land war in Asia.
The Japanese have 3 factories now, 4 including Moscow. The German factory I built here in West Russia was obviously a waste, but it took the British bomber out of action for 1 turn as it went and bombed it. Africa is now completely back under Allied control, so the British have all their territories back, which is nice. But we've got all these tanks coming over, and there is no follow-up for the Americans. Just nothing. Western Europe fell. The 2 tanks fell and did not get a hit, such as it is. And the British built a factory up here. I was hoping to start rallying some stuff, but after the Japanese took Russia, it's painfully apparent we're going to have 7 Japanese tanks here next turn. The Germans are definitely going to smack this turn. They can only hit it with this much stuff, but they're definitely going to hit it and probably take it down to 1 or 2 units, if not absolutely capture it. And there's just way too much stuff here for the Allies to compete with. So, yeah, it's kind of sad that it ended a bit with a whimper. I was hoping to be able to get the Allies to build some stuff up, but even without any German naval presence or air power, the Allies just could not get enough stuff into the right spot at the right time. Did capture Western Europe twice this game. I think the Biggest problem was that failed attack into Archangel by the British a couple of rounds ago. That just opened the door for these 8 German tanks to go into Russia and really set the stage for a beat down by the Japanese. And yes, when the Japanese attacked Russia, they attacked with 7 tanks, and there were 2 fighters left because I pulled the British fighter out, knowing it was a done deal. Pulled the British fighter out to here to go with the 2 American units that were there. And yeah, it just all went horribly. None of the fighters got hits, none of them. So just over and done. So right now, the entire continent of Eurasia is under Axis control, and the only door in here is shut. This one here is going to be closed pretty quickly. Now again, the British could filter stuff back, but why? It's just going to die, right? You can't compete. So the Japanese, once they fix the factory, you can build 8 units there. Germans are going to be able to build 6 units there, to say nothing of the monster stacks they can build there. The Japanese have more. Yeah, it's over. And if we look at the economies right now, Britain's actually been quite resurgent thanks to the Americans liberating most of, or all of Africa. Still missing out on some Middle East money, but they've got Norway. So they're just down 2 from their starting money. So that's not terribly bad. I thought that they did all right. Actually, they should just be down 1, I think. So actually doing better. The Americans are right at par. Actually, yeah, they should be down 1. I think I messed that up because the Americans lost 4 here, gained 2 here, and gained 1 here with New Guinea. So that puts them on a -1. But the Axis, you can see, are making far more money. 51 and 44, if those numbers are correct, but I'm pretty sure they are. And so that's, 95 versus less than 70. And of course, the Soviets are gone. So we take this here, and now we have 9 victory cities. And yeah, I could sit here and, as a solo player, just build up to try to go take London. But that just doesn't seem like an awful lot of fun right now. So there you have it, folks. Hope you've enjoyed it. That is the end of the game. There ain't no more. Thanks so much for watching. And the Axis prevail again in this game. Please leave comments below if you've played this revised edition and have had the Allies have a stunning victory, because I'm finding it very difficult. Maybe this should be played with a bid. I think perhaps what might be a great thing is for India to start with a factory for the British. I didn't build one there this game. This was built by the Japanese. But I think that a British factory to start there, or even one here, just something so that they can have a voice. Because typically by the end of round 2, the only British ability to create anything is up here, and they're just not a threat to anything over here. All their stuff's been sunk, shot down, or destroyed, and they really don't have much use in the game except what they did up here. And I don't like games being formulaic. I like games being very you get to play the game doesn't play you. So let me know in the comments below. The last video I put up, a lot of people said they'd never seen it, and I thought that's interesting. This one I've had for a while. You can see kind of the wear on the box and everything. Little, not box damage, but kind of worn. And pieces are well used. And I've added a lot of pieces to this. Like even today I added 2 or 3 transports for the Americans. I think I added a couple of fighters for the Japanese, or maybe it was something else I added for them. Maybe a bomber. Because they don't give you a plethora of units, and they expect you just to chip everything. I didn't use these chips either from the game because I don't like them. So I used my other ones that I bought from HBG, which are much better. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, folks. Hope as you head towards 2023, you have an excellent year with your family and friends. Hug your loved ones. Thank you, friends, for playing. And unlike the Allies, may the dice be with you.